Well, thanks everybody. Let's go ahead and get started. It's great to see everyone here for our webinar on stock keeping units, something that internally we've joked about a little bit as being kind of a dry topic, but actually as I've really gotten into it and uncovered the importance of it, I think it's super interesting. So I appreciate everybody that's here. We will be recording this session just so that everybody is aware of that. It will be posted on our YouTube channel and linked to from our website afterwards as well. So just so that everyone's aware. And just want to introduce ourselves. I'm Marcus Young. I'm the education and content manager here at Cropster and have been in coffee for, geez, I don't know, about 20 years now. You kind of lose track after a while. But stock keeping units and these sort of tools for keeping your business organized and information flowing smoothly is something that I've found to be so important in my years in coffee, either managing production teams or working with roasting companies or having companies of my own. So I'm really excited about the topic, and I'm excited to have my colleague Kelsey here with me on screen as well. So Kelsey, tell us a little bit about your background and your work at Cropster.
Sure. So I come from a specialty food background, previously in olive oil. But here at Cropster, I am the e-commerce sales manager for North America and New Zealand and Australia. So if you have been interested in e-com, we've probably had a demo or meeting together. And I have conversations about SKUs all day, every day. So happy to bring in some of that knowledge and just conversations I've had with Cropster clients from the past couple of months.
Awesome. That's great. That's great. Well, just to jump right into our agenda and what we're going to be covering today. Kelsey, you want to take us through this list?
Sure. So we'll first discuss what are SKUs. Then we'll talk about what they aren't. Why should you care about them? It can kind of seem maybe like a dry topic, but don't worry, they are very important. We'll give you some examples. And then at the end, we have a Cropster SKU generator that you all will have access to. And we'll answer some Q's and A's, or we'll answer some Q's, give you some A's. And hopefully feel free to answer or ask any questions that you may have.
Great. Yeah, I just want to back that up. These webinars, that's really just with the Cropster team. I love them to be conversational. So if folks have questions, just as we're in the specific content, please just use the chat or use the Q&A feature here in Zoom to ask your questions, and we should be able to pause and answer those. But, right, SKUs, what the heck are they? Kelsey, aren't they complicated or?
I don't think they're really complicated. I think they're actually really helpful. What's complicated is when you don't have them, but you have a lot of products.
Yeah, absolutely. And and here I think to kind of make that point, right, in your modest roastery, in our little fictitious roastery here, perhaps we have these 4 coffees that we sell, kind of 4 core products, right? And as you mentioned, they actually help to keep things simple, because if you're just thinking about it from the product option, it gets quite complicated pretty fast, right?
Exactly.
So right, if for each of these coffees, I offer a 250 gram bag and a 500 gram bag and a 2 or 3 kilo bulk bag, well, suddenly, well, that's only 4 products, but it's actually 12 different options that people are able to purchase. So keeping track of all of that can be a little bit challenging if you're trying to spell it all out for people. And Kelsey, what about this, where it gets even more complicated, right?
Mm-hmm. A lot of folks will often offer different grind sizes, so whole bean, coarse, fine, French press. I've seen the whole gamut. And so once you start adding in grind options, that's 3 more options for each of those 12 bag sizes that you had earlier. So we're now looking at something like 36 possible options.
Right, just from 4 core coffee products, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Um, and just for like a little background, like, as we're kind of looking at this picture, like what really is a SKU kind of in this picture? Is it tied to the green coffee? Is it only tied to what I'm selling? Can you kind of walk through what a stock keeping unit really refers to?
Yeah, so it's essentially variations of the product. So here we're seeing the variation of the type of coffee. So I believe we have a Rwanda, a Colombian, a Peruvian, and a Ugandan. Then we also have your different bag sizes. So that's another variation. The 12 ounce, 3 kilos, 5 kilos. And then we have the 3 different grind sizes. So that's another variation. So 3 variations. And to create a SKU, should I give an example or is that too soon?
No, that's fine. I mean, here's kind of a basic
Perfect.
example from our 340 gram bag of Peruvian coffee.
Yeah, so here we have, just looking at the first line, we have the Peruvian coffee, which is the origin of the coffee. Then we have the size of the bag and then the grind size. And it's laid out for each different type of grind size for this, but you do the same with the different types of bag sizes.
Mhm. No, that's great because I think that kind of middle column, right? That's like Peru, 340 gram whole bean, Peru, 340 gram French press. I mean, that's just a long string of text. And if I'm looking at reports all day long or trying to convey this to my team in packaging or running inventory reports, I mean, I think that kind of an easy to parse logical code really does help keep things simple, at least for the way that my mind works.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then are these our SKUs just important in the kind of the context of what we do at Cropster, right? With Cropster kind of being this core tool to help manage your coffee operation, to help manage your roastery, or do they have kind of value outside of that?
They definitely have value outside of that. It's a great tool for inventory management. If you're using any accounting systems or point of sale systems, they'll probably require a SKU. And with me, I have a marketing background. So I always love to look at SKUs and see how sales are going per SKU and per variation, because then you know what to offer in the future or maybe what to feature in your marketing copy for folks.
Cool. Yeah, right. If I had an option for this Peru that was 1.5 kilo retail bag for consumers to purchase, right? I could run a report on that bag size across all my products, right? And if I never sold any of them, well, that might be a product that I want to drop. Or if I sold them
Exactly.
all the time, right? Like that was a COVID situation. People started buying bigger bags of coffee for home. Well, maybe I need to plan and work on promoting that a little bit more, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Cool. No, that's great. And yeah, and this is just an example of I think how they're used in real life. This is a store that you use, right, Kelsey, built in WooCommerce to sort of demonstrate how Cropster's e-commerce platform works, starting with like a business to business store. And I can see we have SKUs here. Can you take us through what the coding means here and how these SKUs kind of live and work within WooCommerce? We could also be talking about Shopify, right? It looks
Mm-hmm.
different, but at the end of the day, it's the same internally.
Yeah, so this example is for an Ethiopian Yirgacheffe honey processed coffee. And as you can see, it is also for 12 ounces for each of the products. And the only difference here, again, is the grind size. So fine, grind, medium drip, and French press. And the way that WooCommerce uses it is that we have it for each product. And then if you have any integrations, let's say like ShipStation, QuickBooks, Square, all of these tools will be able to know exactly what product you're talking about or what product your customer is purchasing, because you have unique SKUs for each individual product. So that makes it really easy for inventory management and accounting.
Wow. Yeah, it's super cool. And once I sort of know your methodology of naming, right? Like now I understand E for Ethiopia, Y for Yirgacheffe, H for honey, right? So it's, you kind of have a country, region, process code for the kind of core coffee, then followed by bag size and grind. I can understand that code even as an outsider to your company.
Exactly.
Cool. And yeah, and I just grabbed, I just went to Quickbooks and started looking at their help files and their chat to see how they talk about stock keeping units and SKUs. And I like this because I thought it was a good example of a terrible SKU. It showed, on the one hand, it shows how QuickBooks is deeply integrated with SKUs, with everything from invoices to inventory reports to everything that you were talking about. But in this case, I can't make heads or tails of this, right? SKU 2564894, like what the heck is that?
Yeah, they might have a code, like the company two might mean this or that, but just looking at it, you or me, we wouldn't really know what they're talking about.
Right, and this certainly looks like it's an invoicing sheet or something. So if I received this as a customer, this would be totally useless for me and my accounting departments, whereas at least a more typical named SKU might be a little bit more logical. But the point being that with our platforms, it does talk directly into QuickBooks, and whatever SKU you're using in your e-commerce store can sync to and work directly with QuickBooks or with Xero, which is another popular accounting system. Hopefully your bookkeepers would be happy to manage and think in SKUs instead of in these long product descriptions. And then, that sort of does take us to Cropster as well. And here's that, and one example of that Ethiopia Yirgacheffe honey processed in a grinding and packaging report within Cropster. So can you walk us through this view just a little bit, Kelsey, and how you would use this in production?
Yeah, so I always like to start from right to left. So what this would mean for my packaging team is looking at the first line, they would say like, oh, I need 6 2-pound bags and I need 98 5-pound bags. That's going to be used for a whole bean, so I don't have to worry about grinding. And I know that I'll have to divide the 227.7 kilograms of the whole beans amongst these two different products. And our packaging and grinding report is grouped by SKUs. So it makes it, so it's pretty important when you do have SKUs that everything will be organized within our report.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, this is great, right? Like as somebody who's been in that position where I'm grinding and packaging coffee all day long, wow, to have a report like this that I could just grab first thing in the morning as the roaster starts roasting, I would love this, because I would just be able to look at this at a glance and say, okay, I need 98 stickers for 5-pound bags, whole bean, Ethiopia Yirgacheffe, and I need to grab that many bags as well. And I can just start putting stickers on bags. As that coffee comes out of the roaster, I can start grabbing it and queuing it up to run through the grinder for any ground coffee. That's cool. That's really cool.
Yeah. And I usually recommend that folks highlight according to whatever kind of communication they have with their team, but usually highlighting really helps with this report.
Yeah, great. So Joseph has an awesome question. Joseph, thank you, because I was just going to pause here and say, does anybody have questions kind of about SKUs, kind of in the practical world generally? And yours is perfect. Joseph types here. So if you were differentiating between a Bolivia and a Burundi, you would just add a secondary letter after the first. That would absolutely be one option. If you used a 2-letter naming scheme, so BO for Bolivia and BU for Burundi, then that could work. we'll also show you how our SKU generating tool works. In the case of that tool, because it uses an algorithm to build a SKU, if it runs into a situation where there's likely to be a duplicate, it'll just append a number at the end. So not quite as easy to read, but with a small team, it's pretty easy to figure out that, the Bolivia would be number 1 and the Burundi would be number 2, and just get on with it. But yeah, that's perfect. I mean, in creating your own SKUs, that's exactly what I would do. So anybody else that's in here, let's just take a minute, and if you have any questions about what we've covered so far, or kind of generally about what SKUs are and why they're important, now's your chance. And our next topic is going to be to discuss what they aren't. So sometimes things become more clear when we sort of have our point, which we've just made about SKUs, and the counterpoint, which is what they're not. Great. So what SKUs aren't, right? Well, they're not bag marks, right? These are 2 examples of 2 different coffees from Colombia, where you can see there's the lot number on the photo on the right, and the photo on the left, there's a series of numbers printed on the bottom of the bag. Anybody who's purchased green coffee and managed green coffee is familiar with the ICO bag marks, where the first digit corresponds to a country. In this case, number 3 corresponds to Colombia. The second corresponds to an exporter that's registered in that country and with the ICO. In the case of 01, that is the FNC, the Colombian Coffee Federation. And then the third number is the export lot for that year from that exporter. So again, it's a number that, as you get familiar with green coffee, you can sort of parse and manage. It's the kind of number that, just a best practice is, anytime you receive a delivery of new green coffee, always compare that ICO bag mark to the sample that you approved and to the coffee that you previously received, if you're taking multiple pulls from your position over the year. So in some ways it's similar to a SKU, but it's about your raw product. It's about your green coffee and managing that. It's not a stock keeping unit though, because in the case of a stock keeping unit, well, I might roast this Colombia Antioquia from El Aguila. I might sell that as a medium roast Colombia El Aguila. I might also sell that coffee as a dark roast, in which case those would be 2 different products with 2 distinct SKUs. That coffee might also go into a blend, right? So then that would be 1 green coffee being used in 3 different products, with each product requiring its own set of stock keeping units. So I think hopefully that kind of makes the case about how having a good naming mechanism can help you to kind of make sense of all of this data at the end of the day. Kelsey, you want to talk to what SKUs aren't from this perspective?
Yes. So this is, obviously, it looks like a barcode. And this is a UPC, or a universal product code. And usually these have 12 digits, so they don't include any letters or alphabetical symbols. They are licensed from the Global Standard Organization, so it is something you have to purchase. And these are numbers that are used in warehouses, like for Amazon or grocery stores. So this is a great tool if you are expanding into those markets, but they're not necessarily SKUs, which usually help your company internally. These are external numbers where someone from an Amazon warehouse will understand, based on the universal code from the Global Standard Organization, what exactly your product is.
Yeah, it's right. This is what the little laser barcode scanners at the grocery store or in a warehouse are reading, right? So they're machine readable. they very well might be tied to a SKU, but usually because this is registered kind of at an international level, it identifies the manufacturer, so your roasting company, and it identifies a specific product. I've had a coffee company that was very strongly focused on selling in grocery stores. So in even like small, like high-end gourmet type markets, like the Whole Foods markets here in the US or New Seasons markets up in the Northwest, they require these. You have to buy a block of them. You buy them usually from a third party. You don't have to buy 10,000. You might just want to buy 6, right? So you buy them and license them and own them. But they'll be unique to you. A couple of notes just on what I've found makes this easier to manage. I will often have a smaller number of UPC codes than I will SKUs. Now, on the one hand, I might have SKUs for products that I never even sell to grocery, right? I'm not going to sell a grocery store a $90 bag of geisha, for example. So that doesn't necessarily need a UPC. And also, I tend to treat UPCs a little bit more generically if I can convince my grocery customers to kind of go along with this scheme. So rather than needing to buy a huge block of UPCs, I might have one that's just Central America medium roast. And then I can swap whatever product I want throughout the year. So as fresh crop Nicaragua comes in, I can start using that and associate it with the UPC. And as that coffee runs out and maybe I get into a fresh crop Panama, I can just change the product, but keep the UPC the same. So in a case like that, a stock keeping unit becomes super important because I need to be able to run reports on what's actually selling, and I can't rely just on the UPC for that. So just a little tip that I've found worked. If you're lucky, you'll be able to convince a grocery store to let you use that scheme as well. And Joseph has another great question that was just typed in. If you were selling the same coffee as green, would you add the ICO at the end of a SKU? I probably wouldn't do that because that ICO is going to change next year. So, you know, even if you're buying the same coffee from the same exporter, the country code and the exporter code will likely stay the same, but the lot number at the end could change. And then also you kind of end up in a situation where what if you run out of that coffee, right? You get like a huge order for it, you bring in a big new customer, and you've got to swap out your standard Colombia for something that you purchased on the spot market. That's going to also have a different ICO number. So this is where the SKU really helps keep track of what's happening with your products. But then through like smart linking and reporting and using like the green inventory tools in Cropster, you can start understanding which green coffee inputs were contributing to that product, because they're rarely stable throughout a year, despite my efforts as a buyer at planning.
And I don't know if this is what Joseph does, but a local roaster here in my city, they sell bags of green bean for home roasters to roast. So if that's what you would be doing, I would just put G in front of, maybe it's a Colombian, so a GCH if it's a honey processed. So that way, you know, it hasn't been roasted and it's still green.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point too, Kelsey. Thank you. Yeah, I know a company that was founded by a friend and has now been purchased by another friend called Unleashed Coffee. It's like a farm direct roaster. Mm-hmm. They've had great success selling green coffee to home roasters on Amazon. And I think that's perfect. And that speaks to something that we'll show in just a minute, which is maybe including an additional element to a stock keeping unit, which could correspond to the idea of a category. So a category might be green coffee. Another category could be single origin. Another category could be blend. Another category could be something like, I don't know, t-shirts or single origin cup of excellence, right? There can be a lot of different categories. And so as Joseph's saying, they both import and roast. So yeah, so I think it's, for import, you could probably get away just with ICO numbers but it could clean things up a little bit if you're using SKUs as well. Something to think about. These are great questions. I love having an importer and roaster. But let's come back to this, right? Because here's these 36 possible iterations, and this is like, with just 4 coffees, it's pretty complicated. And when I know, most roasting companies throughout the year, you might sell 30 different coffees. And so suddenly it's like hundreds and hundreds of iterations. And this is where SKUs can help keep it a little bit cleaner, perhaps. I took the example that we were just looking at with those 36 iterations and just spelled it out, looking at all of the stock keeping units as a spreadsheet. And you can see, just as Kelsey was recommending, we have added to the picture here a category. In this case, these are all single origin coffees. But you can see now the SKU is SO for single origin. There's that 2-letter code for the product, so RN for Rwanda Nyaminga. If I had Rwanga Twangeri Umusururo, it would be RT. Then I have my package size, so 250G, 500G, or 3K, followed by WB for whole bean, CO for coarse, and FI for fine. So any other comments on this, Kelsey?
I would just think when you are using this tool, think about the categories or variations that are important to your company and the decisions that you make about the products you're selling. For us at Cropster, it makes a lot of sense to look at the bag size and the grind. But if there are other business decisions that you're making, like should we do single origins or blends, consider adding that as a category or an attribute to track.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's awesome. What about things that aren't coffee, right? Like most coffee companies also offer, maybe some French presses and Melita brewers. They might have filters. I mean, I know anybody who watches these webinars knows I always have like a hat from some coffee company or coffee event that I'm wearing. So you might have hats and t-shirts. Or how would you use SKUs for, I don't know, let's just talk about like a t-shirt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so for a t-shirt, you would have t-shirt. Some of the variations might be color, so maybe blue, white, black. And then another variation might be size, so small, medium, large, extra large. Mm-hmm. And then from there, you might have like a t-shirt with coffee bean design or a t-shirt with like logo design. So those could also be either product names or variations. Cool.
Yeah, boy, especially like anything like a t-shirt that's kind of produced ahead of time and you're trying to manage inventory from, a SKU makes it so much easier. Same thing for coffee. I mean, especially if you're a roaster that roasts and kind of roasts against an inventory level, SKUs become quite important. And as Cropster works on better accommodating that sort of a business model, SKUs will become more important within Cropster as well, which is part of the reason why we have this session. Yeah, that's great. So again, I just want to pause for a minute before we kind of head towards the end of the presentation. We're going to actually show you all the tool that you can download, but does anybody have questions about what SKUs and stock keeping units are not, or about this kind of one use case scenario that we've been showing everybody? Great, great. That's just to zoom in case somebody couldn't read it. I guess I could have shifted to this slide earlier. So let me actually show you this tool that we created. So I'm going to stop screen sharing for a minute to get out of the presentation. And instead, I will show this Excel form. And I believe Hannes has created both an Excel version of this for you to download, but also access to a Google Sheets version that you can just make a copy of. But you can see here, it's just a spreadsheet. Basically anything from row 10 to column D, you can customize any way that you want. Here's an example of a coffee t-shirt in multiple colors and multiple sizes, and the corresponding SKUs. This brings us exactly to Joseph's question about what happens when there's a duplicate, like blue and black both start with BL. So here you would just know that BL stands for blue. And then once you get into blacks, you get the number 1 appended to it. Also, extra large versus double extra large triggers a similar logic. So, but it's as simple as just coming in here and typing in your category. And I roast the finest espresso. And I sell it in, let's go to, come across here to the US in 12-ounce bags, and I only sell whole bean. Right? Then this tool becomes super easy to use because I can just copy this down and just add, 16 ounce. Maybe I also sell like a generic 1 pound. I know that that's the same as 16 ounces, but oftentimes roasters might offer kind of a retail version, like a glossy, beautiful bag in 16 ounce, and then 1 pound that they sell to like restaurants, right? And then boom, before I have it, I have stock keeping units suddenly for that whole product. And if I wanted to also offer this in another grind, I can just, with a simple copy and paste, come in here and just name my next grind option. And so, yeah, the reason that we wanted to give folks this tool, Kelsey, you can talk about this a little bit because you've worked with so many customers setting up their e-commerce stores. Why do we have this tool? Why did we take the time to build this little app to give people?
Well, oftentimes, if folks don't have their SKUs already set up, it's something that can take quite a while and can sometimes feel really overwhelming. Like, what variations should I choose? How do I organize it? So just to save people time, really the e-commerce product or package is about saving time. And so this is just another addendum to that, where we just want to help folks save time by creating the SKUs in a really easy manner for them.
Cool. No, that's great. And I just, as you were talking, I was just adding filters just to kind of have fun and play with this myself. Right, so I could have Melita, V60, Chemex, and both white and brown and in different sizes. And it'll just build the stock keeping number for us. So, and Joseph typed in a great question too. Where would you add the same coffee but different roast profiles? Let's just do that really quick, right? Like, so maybe we have, and I think it could happen in a couple of places, right? Like maybe I have a category of single origin and I sell Rwanda Nyamwinga there. Well, what if I also want to sell the same coffee as my dark roast? So I'm just going to copy all this information and paste it down here. I could do it and just create a category of dark roast coffees. So that's an option. I could also keep it as single origin. And I could call it like Rwanda dark roast. So I could do it in a couple of places. I could change the name, or I could change the category. So that's how I would manage it. I'm sure others are more creative than I am and might find other cases. What do you think, Kelsey?
That's where I would have suggested you can put it in the different variation columns. But I think for me, I immediately went to either the category from what I've seen on people's websites or the name if you're really wanting to have different different roast for a coffee.
Right. Yeah, and it's some of it's just like what we're accustomed to seeing because of what our peers in the industry are doing and what customers are used to.
Mhm.
It could totally work to have a third variation of roast level. I mean, that could be cool, right? Like somebody could create a coffee company, absolutely, where you could choose your coffee, choose your roast level, choose the bag it goes into, and choose the grind. And that would become a third variation, which I think would make SKUs even more important then. Yeah, very cool. Very cool. But I think, yeah, now we're kind of used to thinking about it as categories or product names.
Mm-hmm. Just from the experience we've had. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, great. Well, as we wrap up, I just want to make sure that we have time for Q&A, but before we do that or while we do a little bit of Q&A, you can follow this QR code or this link. It will take you to our educational article or our blog post that talks about some of these topics around stock keeping units and can be kind of a reference into the future. Also from there, there's a link to just fill out a little registration form and you'll get a copy of that spreadsheet we were looking at to download and use as your own. So I'll leave this up just for a minute. If anybody has any questions, now's the time to ask. Or any parting thoughts from you, Kelsey?
I'm not sure if this is the right slide, but I would say if anyone has any questions about SKUs or about Cropster eCommerce, feel free to email me. My email is Kelsey, KELSEY @cropster.com, or just like you brought up, you can feel free to book a demo with me and I can show you how we use SKUs both on the website and in our Cropster eCommerce package.
And I'm just typing in the chat window for anybody, both of our email addresses.
Perfect, thank you.
And yeah, and this QR code here will take you directly to our book a demo link where either Kelsey or our colleague Heidi, depending on where you're located in the world, can set up a time to meet with you and really understand how to do this. We do have another great question up here. I'm going to put this slide back so folks can download a copy. Chet has the question, any thoughts on the difference in utilizing SKUs between roast to order and roast to par production flows? This is like the $1 million question, Chet. I'm glad it's like I planted you in the audience to ask this question. Kelsey, do you want to start us off down this path?
I'm gonna go back and reference it. I would throw it back to you. To me, honestly, I would use the same SKU if it's the same product. That is my intuition of if it is a order so roast to order is something that I'm roasting as the order comes in and I'm packaging and grinding it. Roast to par is maybe that it's beans that I'm keeping on inventory that have already been roasted and fulfilling orders from those already roasted beans. To me, a SKU is a product that I am eventually selling to a customer. So for me, either way, whether it's roast to order or roast to par, the SKU would be the same. Is that what you would also think or approach it that way, Marcus?
I think so. I think in some ways, if you're roasting to order 100%, the SKU is the SKU, and it tells me from like a production and fulfillment standpoint how many bags I need to go into what box, ground what way, to get out to my customers. I think when you're roasting to a par, it's maybe a little bit different, and it depends on how you're roasting to par. So Chad, I'd be really interested in how you envision this. if you're roasting to par and you're keeping that on-hand roasted inventory in a bucket or a bin, but not bagged as you're going to sell it to customers, in that case, it's not a SKU yet. It might be part of a SKU, right? It might be SORN, because this is a bucket of single origin Rwanda Nyaminga, and I would probably have a PR code attached to it from Cropster. But until it gets into a bag, which tells me the other variation information, right? The size of the bag and if it's ground or whole bean and how it's ground, then it's not quite a SKU yet. So not to talk around the answer, but I think it's, that SKUs could still be useful in that case where you're holding your kind of overstock or your pars in bulk. A lot of folks actually hold it in bags, right? They're just like, well, we know that on an average week, we sell 600 retail bags of our espresso blend. So on Monday, we produce those. We always make sure that we have 600 bags. So in that case, I would use SKUs as well, because I would take a quick inventory and say, okay, I have 350 retail bags of espresso left from last week. Well, 600 minus 350 tells me that I need 250 bags roasted and ready to go this week to maintain that par. A SKU is going to help me to do that. It's just going to be like a nice shortcut and shorthand for what I have in inventory, what I have available to sale, and what needs to be produced. So I don't know. That's how I think. That's specifically how I think about it, which I think is saying the same thing you said, Kelsey.
I was definitely thinking the model of bins, because that's often what I see is people will put it in tubs or bins. So yeah, but if it's in a bag, definitely same approach.
Perfect. Well, great. I think if anybody has any more questions, we will keep this session live for another minute or two. But otherwise, we just really appreciate everybody who joined us today. Don't be shy. Please book a demo, visit our website, send us an email. We are here for you and to understand your needs and to help you find solutions and workarounds and to better use Cropster as a tool to manage your company.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, everyone. And again, just like Marcus said, feel free to message us anytime.
Yeah, this was really fun. Thanks, everybody. Oh, one more new message.
Thank
just
you.
To thank you. Jean, thank you as well. And it was great to see so many folks. This will be posted if you want to review it on our YouTube channel and on our website fairly soon. Or you can visit our blog section and read the corresponding article that goes along with this session. So thanks, everybody.